Hello and welcome to this week's Hippie Hyena. Now, as I've mentioned before, I often record these episodes in advance, and it's been a little while since I recorded one, and a lot's happened since then. There was the whole Capitol riots, and Joe Biden being sworn in, which was nice. So I thought, instead of taking a look at some thought leaders' perspectives, I'd just trawl around and find some general messages from places like Parler, although obviously that's closed now, Twitter, various places that right-wingers lurk, and have a look at if there was some kind of generalised lesson we can learn, at least learn a bit more about what the right-wing thinks about the current political situation. Let's take a look.
If the traitorous cop who so cowardly executed our American patriot is not immediately arrested and imprisoned, we shall storm the Capitol and proceed to execute every cop and piece of shit traitorous liberal politician we find. Hashtag no shelter, hashtag no quarter, hashtag patriot party, hashtag liberalism is a cancer, hashtag Rittenhouse 2024, hashtag civil war, hashtag stop the steal, hashtag we the people, hashtag Trump 2020.
So this is about Trump supporter Ashley Babbitt, who was brainwashed into thinking it was a good idea to storm the Capitol by a swathe of right-wing sewage pumped directly into her face by the Mercer-owned, billionaire-owned media. And as she tried to break down the door to where the Congress people were, as she was standing in the video, you can see, standing next to a person with some kind of pretty big and dangerous-looking gun, a cop opened fire on her to stop her from getting in and shot her, and then she died. This is one of the, I think, 4 or 5 deaths that occurred. I think it's the only death that occurred from cop killing a MAGA. There was a guy who tased his own balls. There was a woman who got trampled by the crowd, and there was a cop who got his head stoved in with a fire extinguisher. But this is about Ashley Babbitt. So the thing is, what's sort of interesting about this is I've noticed that there's quite a confusion about the talking points when it comes to this narrative. They haven't quite got their stories straight, as we'll see is a kind of theme for a lot of these mad ramblings. So this person is clearly calling her a patriot and calling for blood in her name. So I wonder what other people are saying about this.
This is the face of the known Antifa spy, Ashley Babbitt.
Ooh, probably don't really need to point this out, but it wasn't an Antifa spy. That is a load of old nonsense.
Who posed as a MAGA patriot, and she deserves what was coming for her. You can't fake patriotism, and her death will not be mourned. Hashtag Ashley Babbitt, hashtag Antifa, hashtag Capitol.
So just rampant denialism then. What is particularly unpleasant about this is that they've hashtagged her name, so potentially anyone who knew her or anyone who was badly affected by her death and happens to be searching for this hashtag might come across this post saying that she deserved what she got and will not be mourned, which is pretty unpleasant. And here's the thing, she didn't deserve what she got, in a sense, because she was fooled into being there by people who wanted to exploit her insecurities for political gain. And maybe she was an idiot, and maybe she deserved something, but probably didn't deserve being shot in the neck to die amongst a bunch of idiots who were calling out for a medic. They were apparently calling for a medic like it was a video game. They didn't bring any medics with them. There were no medics there. I mean, in general, medics tend to be educated, so it's unlikely there were going to be any medics there. But that image of these Call of Duty playing morons larping around and calling for a medic, I think kind of sums up in some weird poetic way the sheer idiocy of it and the sheer waste of life.
I saw the video and watched it frame by frame, just like it was presented. She didn't look like she'd have been killed to me. Besides, that a 45 would have done enough damage that blood should have been shooting everywhere, so I don't believe she was killed. I believe it was staged, all to make Trump look bad.
It's really weird that they don't seem to understand that Trump already looks really, really bad. He looks really bad because he is really bad. This is just a kind of thought-stopping technique. It's like they look at something, they don't like it, so they concoct the idea that it was faked with no evidence whatsoever. And it just goes to show like how the right wing chews up and spits out its followers, because none of them give a shit about each other at all. I mean, that's almost what defines the right wing, isn't it? Utter selfishness combined with stupidity and denialism of facts. That's basically what it is. But you'd think that they could somehow muster a bit of sympathy, a bit of empathy, a bit of something towards a person who gave up their very life to support a cause, no matter how stupid, that they too similarly support. And yet no, because it doesn't fit their PR, they just drop her like a hot turd. So given that the Capitol riots happened and their idiotic coup failed to materialise and they didn't get the injustice that they were fighting for, and Trump himself basically disavowed them and effectively conceded to Biden, I wonder how they're feeling about things now.
This is serious, America. 10 hours ago, Lin Wood said he heard they were going to execute Trump and his followers, and now this fake videos is being released and none of the people close to him are saying anything. Look closely at Trump's neck and collar in the concession video, computer animation or something. There is a hole where his neck should be, just above the mic. There is also some kind of pixelation going on by his collar and neck. His skin does not look real. Slow it down and expand the screen and look closely. I know they have the ability to copy voice. They could have him. I don't know, but that is not him.
You see, in fascism, the fascist has to imagine that their leader is all-powerful, a kind of alpha male tough guy. And because they've chosen Trump, a flabby, wet baby of a man, who's basically what Prince Joffrey would have turned out like if they hadn't poisoned him, but instead fed him on nothing but McDonald's and Diet Coke for his whole life. This leads to some severe cognitive dissonance, and when faced with something like Trump's sort of concession speech and his disavowal of them, which in their minds is a form of weakness, they just cannot face it. They just can't face it, and so they try to trick themselves and others into imagining that it's not happening, just covering their ears and la 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 la, it's all fake, it's all fake, it's all fake. And I know this is a kind of obvious one. I mean, in terms of it's obvious denialism, this sort of thinking affects the entirety of the right wing. It may be sort of more subtle in some ways, but that is still precisely what's happening. Do you remember back when the Black Lives Matter protests were going on? Do you remember what the right wing was saying then? They were saying that they're the party of law and order, and that Blue Lives Matter, they supported the cops. And they also kind of, have that general respect, I suppose you'd call it. I prefer the term bootlicking towards uniformed authorities like the police and the military. I wonder, after the events of the Capitol, I wonder how they're feeling about those two groups now.
Start killing cops, along with the piece of shit that birthed the traitor who is sure to chime in on Parler. I'm completely fed up with the law enforcement community and their families. Bring this war to their homes. I'm beyond sick of this garbage. Kill them all.
I mean, I don't know much about the law, but that kind of seems to me to be some kind of incitement to violence, incitement to terrorism, perhaps. I mean, they're literally threatening policemen's families as if they want to sort of reenact some bizarre LARP of the White Knight from the Watchmen TV show. So what about the military then? Surely they still love the military.
Well, Jarhead, your beloved GOP politicians are the domestic terrorists. You don't seem to realise the country you fought for is gone. You live in a communist country now. Just wait till the military is turned loose on you. They will shoot you as ordered.
Ah, fun. So, now I'm not saying it is this, but it kind of almost looks like the reason they were supporting the cops wasn't so much that they really were supporting the cops. It's more that they liked the cops hurting the people that they were hurting. That when they said Blue Lives Matter, it wasn't so much as support for the cops, but more a kind of disagreement that Black Lives mattered. It almost seems like that, doesn't it? It's sort of strange that, if it was that, this is exactly the sort of thing you'd expect to see now, wouldn't it be?
So let me get this straight. They find this guy 2 days after this happened, halfway across the country in Arkansas, but they can't find evidence of the bogus election that is totally obvious. Are you kidding me?
No, there's a very easy explanation for that. It's because the person infiltrating the Capitol and putting his feet up on the desk actually happened. Another interesting, let's say, trend I've been noticing is that the results of the Capitol riot and and its surrounding fallout and Biden's inauguration have led the right wing to look back at history and maybe reconsider their perspectives on one A. Hitler. The right wing always have a weird relationship with the Nazis, being that sometimes they say that the Nazis were socialists, which is absurd, and sometimes they say that the Nazis were actually the good guys, and sometimes they say the Holocaust didn't happen, and sometimes they say that the Holocaust did happen, but it was a good thing. So their perspectives on it are really kind of, let's say, confused at best. But it's interesting that this insurrection has brought that back out.
Prepare yourselves, the dictatorship is here. Adolf Hitler would be proud. They banned the Donald subreddit. They banned the Donald Trump subreddit. Twitter permanently banned Donald Trump. Apple is threatening to ban Parler.
They have now banned Parler. Pretty much everywhere has banned Parler. Parler has gone banned from everywhere except for the Russian server it's now being hosted on, which is kind of a weird turn up for the books, isn't it? Or at the same time completely unsurprising, because for a group that's supposed to be against communism, they have some pretty weird connections to Russia. That's a whole weird relationship thing that's a completely other tangent, which is probably quite interesting, but let's get back to Hitler.
R/Republican has had to go private. Wake up. We no longer live in a free society. We live in a dictatorship. Welcome to the dystopia. With what they say about Trump and his supporters today, I don't know if I really trust anything they have to say about Hitler. He was Times Man of the Year and used to write letters to Gandhi.
Oh really? Letters to Gandhi, you say? I hadn't heard that. In that case, all is forgiven. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. I mean, you know, the biggest problem is probably the genocide. It was the genocide thing. Yeah, that kind of outweighs the Time magazine thing and letters to Gandhi thing. I mean, who knows what was in those letters? I haven't read them, but I can't imagine there's anything in them that would make you forgive genocide. And here's the thing, they're sort of right in one sense, and the sense is that history will remember Hitler and Trump in some similar ways, in the ways that history will remember them largely accurately. They'll remember Hitler as a total genocidal maniac monster, and they'll remember Trump as the worst president in US history, who not only had horrible aims, but was so wildly incompetent that he couldn't even achieve those idiotic goals.
So on one hand, it could be true, but after they beat him and Germany, they could lie and say whatever they wanted. Makes you question the bullshit you were taught in history class. I believe one of the reasons why Hitler was so popular was people didn't like seeing their daughters raped and abused. That's one of the reasons Trump is so popular.
Well, it's sort of right. The reason that Trump and Hitler were both as popular as they were, I'm not going to say that popular. I think Hitler was probably more popular than Trump is. After all, Hitler won an election with, I'd imagine, the popular vote, something that Trump has never done. And I don't think Hitler was impeached. Trump was impeached twice. But the fundamental reasons for their popularity amongst those that they are popular with is the same, because they prey on the most unpleasant, prejudicial, and bigoted fears of the stupidest people that exist in a population.
Actually stands up to the moral degeneracy of the environment we live in. Never forget what the Weimar Republic was like. We are 10 times worse today. Half of World War II and World War I is memory hold from a time before digital communications. The US history books are a joke. No one will ever know the real cause of World War II. It's just, all of a sudden, for no reason whatsoever, Hitler started killing Jews.
It's funny, or at least not funny, predictable, unsurprising if you've spent as much time engaging with right-wingers as I have, that it always seems it's only 1 or 2 steps away from them arguing for anti-Semitism, that it always seems to come down to skull sizes and Jews with them. Really weird. Because in many ways, that's kind of what it boils down to. Some extreme extremely bizarre conspiracy theories and very unusual obsessions with very particular and odd niche things that nobody else is even interested in. I mean, they try to dress up right-wing thought as if it's sort of mainstream and ordinary, but it's not. It's bloody weird. And hopefully that's kind of the lesson to be learnt from this, that if you just take a look at the kind of generalized zeitgeist of the right today, it's just this odd collection of conspiracy theories, debunked nonsense, denialism, just really odd stuff that is kind of reminiscent of like flat earther stuff, because really right-wingers are like the flat earthers of politics. So I hope you enjoyed this little look into the postings of the right, and I hope that you're doing well in this lockdown. Stay healthy, stay safe, and see you next week. Mwah.